hearing. One reason why the eyes of the Sahaba are filled with tears, because they can see that after years and years and generation and century of Arabia of tit-for-tat killings, you take my sheep, I'll take a sheep from your tribe. You fire an arrow into my encampment, I'll fire an arrow into yours. You steal one of my people, this tit-for-tat, Cosa Nostra, mafia culture, which dominated Arabia in the Jahiliyyah, he's putting a stop to it. No more. Whatever you think is owed, now there is Sharia, there is law. You go to a judge, you don't take justice into your own hands. And from that time, abolition. أيها الناس فإن الشيطان قد يئس من أن يعبد بأرضكم هذه أبدا. O people, the shaitan has despaired of ever being worshipped in this land of yours, ever again. ولكنه أن يطاع فيما سوى ذلك فاحذروه على دينكم. But he hopes that he will be obeyed in what is less than that. So beware of him with regard to your religion. The shaitan, which is nafs, which is hawa, which is the personification of that powerful force that drags us down. It's a sunnah, mandub, to recite in the Eid prayer, Surah Al-A'la. It's one of the most beloved of surahs to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's ever fresh. It speaks of the springtime. It speaks of قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. He who purifies himself has succeeded. وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى, and mentions the name of his Lord and prays. And where does this come from? إِنَّ هَذَا لَفِي الصُّحُفِ الْأُولَى صُحُفِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى. This is in the foregoing scriptures, the scrolls of Ibrahim and Musa. The universal law, the basic principle of religion is overcome the lower self. Disobey that whispering that sounds like a person, that's like a human that's telling you, do this, don't do that, like a voice that some people with mental health troubles, may Allah give them relief, hear in themselves to do evil things. We are all mentally ill in that way, in that we hear that voice. The nafs. The only real enemy of the ummah, because the nafs promises us delights. Do this bad thing, steal this, go shoplifting, don't pay your taxes, fiddle your benefits, be rude to your neighbor. All of these things, every day, whisper, whisper, whisper. And who amongst us can deny that we hear those whisperings? And in every moment, there are the two paths. There's the path of dignity, and there's the path of gravity. So he's telling us here, beware, fahdharu, beware. If only we can overcome the ego, our families will become like gardens. If we can overcome the ego, our neighbors will love us. If we can overcome the ego, the non-Muslims will love us. We'll become a communion of awliya once again, and nobody, however dark their hearts, fails to respect somebody who has overcome his ego and is full of light and service to others. So he's warning us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about this. And what is the basic story of the Hajj? Look at Sayyidina Ibrahim Khalilullah alayhi salam and the sacrifice he has to make. We couldn't carry 1% of that. In the dream he sees that he is to sacrifice his son. We find it hard to sacrifice a little bit of interest in our bank account, or a little bit of this or a little bit of that. These sacrifices are hard for us. Can you imagine? The most precious thing to him, the one who is the heir to the covenant, is to be slaughtered by his own hand. Bala'un mubin, a great trial. But because of his obedience to his Lord and his overcoming of his lower self, look at what becomes of that one act of overcoming ego. We are here today. The Ummah is here. 3 great monotheistic families, so many souls transformed, so much great art, so much. All of history is changed by the fact that he overcomes his own preference and obeys his Lord. Subhanallah. And when we do the Hajj, what do we say? More than anything else, Allahu Akbar. This is what Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam is preparing to say as he prepares to cut the throat of his only beloved son. Allah is greater. the best thing anyone can say, Allahu Akbar, greater than my particular preferences, my chosen lifestyle, my whatever it is that's me, which is just from the froth of the ego and has no substance and never brings happiness. Instead, the happiness that comes from being in control of that stallion that wants to race away with you into some place that will certainly not be good for you. مَلِّ بِرَدِّ جَمَاحٍ مِّنْ غَوَايَتِهَا كَمَا يُرَدُّ جِمَاحُ الْخَيْلِ بِاللُّجُمِ. The poet says, who is going to help me control this stallion? Who will give me the reins that will control this mad horse that I seem to be riding? He's talking about his own self, his own ego, the nafs. It's difficult. In a sense, all of life is, shall I give way to ego or shall I defeat the ego? And the experience of the believer is that the more you defeat the ego, the more life becomes beautiful and sweet, and the more you're loved, and the more things fall into place. The shaitan promises you only ghurur, something that looks sweet from a distance, but actually is a trick every time. So he's saying this, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in his great khutbah. وَأَمَّا بَعْدُ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ فَإِنَّ لَكُمْ عَلَى نِسَائِكُمْ حَقًّا وَلَهُنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ حَقًّا وَاسْتَوْصُوا بِالنِّسَاءِ خَيْرًا فَقَدْ أَخَذْتُمُوهُنَّ بِأَمَانَةِ اللَّهِ. What does he want to tell us next? This is his khutbah to his ummah for all time. O people, you have rights over your womenfolk, and they have rights over you. So I urge you to be good to women, because you have taken them as Allah's amana. They belong to God. Everybody, everything belongs to God. When they are in your household, if you're a man, it's Allah's amana, something precious. Another of the great stories of the Hajj. All of the religion really is there in the stories of the Hajj. We go from Safa to Marwa, and who does not remember, as he's moving up and down between those two little hills, the story of the first person ever to do that? Ummuna Hajar, our mother Hajar. May Allah show her His mercy and His grace. Hajj is also a story about the women folk who are now being included in the monotheistic story. Islam is the only religion, some of whose practices are founded by a woman. And there she is, on her own, single mother with her child. And is she thinking about herself? Nafsi, nafsi, nafsi? No, she's thinking about the child, and this is the high degree of motherhood. Al-Jannatu tahta aqdamil ummahat. Paradise is beneath the feet of mothers. Why? Because she gives. She's not for herself, she's for the other, and that giving and that giving and that giving is her path to paradise.